Hey everyone, Dan here. Before we get into it, if you enjoy these videos, please hit the like and subscribe button and keep in mind that these are my own thoughts, opinions, and ideas. These are not meant to be, nor should you take them as investment or trading advice in any way, shape, or form. Do your own due diligence, put in the work for yourself, and make your decisions based on that. Enjoy. Alright folks, here we are on Thursday, November 16th. We're going to take a look at Mara today. So Mara's been sort of caught between this 1038 level to the upside and this more or less the 887 level to the downside. I know it's dipped, as you can see, a couple times down to this 834, but they're relatively tight in. So we could call it about 850 up to about 1050 or so. And I thought we'd see, what it's looking like here, and then flip over to the Thinkorswim, see what it's looking like there, and call it a video. So if you didn't remember, it was caught under this downtrend resistance for quite a while. It sidestepped its way out, and then it had a nice gap up and tried to get some distance, but it came down to fill that gap. Now, the sort of stabilizing potential good news here is that it came down and filled that gap. That gap filled right at about 887, right? It's just a little bit higher than that at 902. And after it filled, the worry when it fills a gap like that, to my mind, is not that it filled the gap, but that the momentum that it generates can drag the stock down further. And you saw a little bit of that here and here, but other than that, it's spent time after filling the gap trying to stabilize, and then it's constantly had the bulls step in and put the buying pressure on around the 834 level. So if it can sort of sustain levels above that 834, not come back down to it again. If it came back down to it again, I'd start to get a little bit concerned of, hey, at some points the bulls might not show up here. The buyers might not be there anymore. And if they aren't, how quick is that fall to 8 or below 8? So if it can continue to stabilize at or over this 887 level, I could see it sort of putting in a lackadaisical uptrend support here. I'm not going to put it in yet because right now my concern is still with getting distance from this downtrend resistance. But if it can continue to put in the motion here, that'll be something to look at in the future. Now, the only other formation concern that I would have here would be, all of this, even further back, even this intense drawdown that we've had, and now this bit of flagging pattern here. Are we just putting in a bear flag? I don't know, potentially. We're going to have to see just sort of, how the structure continues to play out. But right now it's sort of, to me, in that realm still. It's in the realm of possibility. If it can continue to establish, though, over this, say, 949 level and start to, instead of compress itself in here, then we start to have, some potential good motion coming in. And we can see if there's an uptrend support that develops. So that's mostly what I'm looking at for the time being. But in any case, these levels all the way up to 1232, down to 672, still all look good to me. Looks like it's playing off of all of these for the time being. I'm just waiting to see if we build an uptrend support here or if we end up bear flagging and breaking down. We'll have to wait and see. Now, on the Thinkorswim side of things, we're stuck to the mid-range of the channel, so kind of what you would expect, kind of that consolidation, that flagging pattern that we were talking about. See there, here's the big breakdown, and then this, pattern upward. So we are triggering. So we had a trigger back here, and it fired, and not a thing really happened. It just sort of continued to kind of mostly go sideways and maybe a smidge up. But it's just pinned to the mid-range of the channel, and now it's been for the last several days triggering again. So what I would be really interested to see if it plays out, because this certainly happens, we see it quite frequently. I feel like it comes up a lot. Trigger, fire, nothing happens. It's at the mid-range of the channel. Re-trigger, refire, that's where the move comes from. Or that's where you see the move happen. So because this triggered and fired at the mid-range of the channel, basically nothing happened, and we're really quickly now getting a re-trigger When that refire happens, I'm really interested to see if we get strong move. And you might see a strong move in both directions. So you might first see a counter move, and then the real move, the sustained move. So that could look like, a counter move to the downside that brings it all the way down quickly to the lower bound of the channel, and then it just bangs upward. Or you could see the inverse of that, where it comes up to the upper bound of the channel when it starts firing, and then bang, big free fall to the downside. So that's what I would be looking for. But I don't know when it's going to fire. Obviously, we have to wait for the indicator to show us. But really just sort of, not only is it compressed and kind of died down here on, pinning itself to the mid-range of the channel, but you also see the histogram here. You see how big these waves were on the histogram. This is just piddly stuff. This is a whole bunch of nothing, basically. Right? So, but that's also sort of what you want to see when you see the trigger and fire happening. You see back here, this trigger and fire, trigger as it was at the mid-range of the channel, and then when it fired, it was just boom, it was just downside. And then it did look like maybe you had a bit of a counter move, right? But all it did was wrestled with the mid-range of the channel and then just banged out the rest of that fire to the downside. And so that was a really good call out by the TTM squeeze indicator. And then the one before that, so we didn't have a trigger and refire. Here's another really good example. Trigger this whole time as it's pinned to the mid-range of the channel and fires and just booms. So, neither of those showing a counter move and then a real move, but also neither of those showing a trigger and fire that does nothing and then a retrigger and refire with the move. So I don't know if this one will follow the same pattern or a different pattern of just sort of like profiling the move immediately, or if it will act a little bit differently because we are getting it on a re-trigger and a refire. Have to sort of wait and see, but kind of an interesting moment coming up for Mara, depending on what comes of this trigger and fire. All right, folks, I hope that you've had a good trading week, and as always, I appreciate you watching, and I will see you in the next video.